Welcome everyone, we are back with the second series of the PD Chat Show. We're eager to go and we've got some fantastic stuff. Hope everyone is well, but first of all, we wouldn't be a chat show without my two amazing panel. They're regular panels, they're regular faces of the PDC. So, Mr. Pete Cater, thank you very much for joining us again.
Hello everybody.
Hello, and as you see, second series, new background for Pete. With the same old background, same everything else, just a longer beard, is Mr. Rob Bryan. How are you, buddy?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very, very well, thanks. So nice to be back. It's so nice to be back. Inside the darker weather, so it's not very nice outside at the moment. And again, our special guest tonight, is the unbelievable Mr. Paul Wertico. Hello, Paul. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Hello everybody.
Good.
Glad to be here.
So remember, guys, you can be a part of this as well, because obviously this is your chat show as well. So please, in your comments, if you ask any questions, or basically any conversations you want to say, or just little comments about what we're talking about today, please put them in the actual comments below, and I'll try and read out as many as I possibly can. So, just before we do start with, because obviously the regular people will know that we do obviously have like a conversation starter, but I just want to talk about a few things before. Now, we've rebranded. This month we've actually rebranded. Now, hopefully, people have liked actually what we've done. And I'll print this off. This is our brand new logo. What do we think to that, guys? Please put in the comments below. Do you like it? Do you think it's spot on, up to date, modern, and everything else? Do you think it's like, well, you don't know what they're talking about there? So this is our new branding. Now you can see it's basically based on our old picture of the Birdland Gretsch snare there. So we're keeping tradition, and we like it anyway. So there we go. So now some new branding. The other thing we launched in the last couple of weeks is our PD camp is coming back, guys, in February, on the 19th to 21st of February. Unfortunately, because of situations, and I don't want to let anybody down, we're not going to do it in person, but we are going to do it online on Zoom. You'll get exactly the same experience as you would normally if you're actually in person. Beside the side-by-side clinics running from the Friday afternoon through to the Sunday afternoon into the early evening. There's many stuff going. Special guests, everything that you would normally have with the camp. We're going to give you to it from your home. So it may be the better idea, because you'll have a full drum kit there and a practice pad. That's all we ask. You can mute yourself, ask the questions. Is interactive as normal. You will see Rob and you'll see Pete there as well, because they are part of the PD tutors of the PD team. So it is fantastic so we can actually do this now, because we're actually moving. Another thing, we're moving to our new premises very shortly. I'm just waiting to find out. So that's been called the PD Cave. And for you regular viewers out there, yes, everything has to start with a C, because it's Palace Drum, whatever it is. So I think that pretty much is the housekeeping done. So thanks so much for listening to that one. But if you want more information, obviously just go to palacedrumclinic.com under my arm, or for the Facebook site, or the Palace Drum campsite on Facebook, and also pop over to the Palace Drumming Club if you're not there anyway. So tonight we can see lots of people joining us. So I'm going to put the question out there, guys. Special guest first. Now, I think this is an age-old question where it keeps coming back time after time after time. What is groove? What makes groove? So, Paul, can I open up to this first? In your eyes, what makes groove?
Well, it depends on what music you're talking about. So I think sometimes people think that groove is good time, on a drum set, balance of the instruments, hi-hat, bass drum, snare drum, all that stuff. But there's so many other ways that you would think don't groove, but they do. For instance, I teach a blues class. Now, if you listen to a lot of Muddy Waters or, Howlin' Wolf, and if they have drummers on there like Fred Below and stuff, that stuff grooves, but it's by far not perfect, meaning that it has forward motion, it tells the story, it doesn't lose the essence of what it is. So things that were, sometimes like more modern blues, like if you think of blues, rock blues, or R&B blues, it might be played by more technically proficient musicians, but it also loses the essence of really what it was. So to me, a groove is where the band is playing together, they agree to go wherever they go, okay? Just like, if we listen to Who or Led Zeppelin, the stuff is not metronomic. Just, and that's fine because it works. They flow together. You can also have like the Rolling Stones, where you might have someone in the center of the beat, someone a little in front, someone in back, and they all kind of move together in time, and that makes the groove different. And then you've got groove, like machine-like grooves, where people, the stuff is like quantized, very specific, people still move, but it doesn't have the same feeling. So I guess it depends for me on what serves the music best. And what I always tell my students is, how do you make the music successful at what it's supposed to be? And that's sort of what I think of. I mean, we can elaborate for an hour actually on this and how do you even work on it? Because people say, can you teach groove? Can you teach how to have good time? I say yes. To a point. It's just the way you have to look at it. So I can go into, you want me to go into more detail about things, or you can ask specific questions about like what I'm talking about? Anybody want to interject?
I think go into it first and see where we go from there.
Okay. So for instance, say like if a student wants to study jazz with me, okay. And I'm not talking about the universe. I'm a tenured professor at Roosevelt University in Chicago. I'm not talking about like those students. I'm talking about, I have, people call up for private lessons, and sometimes they'll go like, wow, I want to learn jazz. I go, oh, okay. That's great. What jazz do you listen to? Well, I don't really listen to jazz. I just want to learn how to play it. And like, it's like, okay, what does that mean? So then, they come down, and they might try to go ding, ding, the ding, ding, like really try to play the rhythm sort of, but it doesn't have the sound or the inflection or the flow. It doesn't have anything to do with it because they haven't done any research on how to do it. So for me, I even had one student who went to a different university over the summer. He wanted to study with some famous drummers. So he went around and he studied with one drummer in New York, really famous drummer. I won't mention the name, but
I already know who you mean. I already know who you mean.
Really? Okay. Well,
Yes,
let's. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so what happened was when he went there, I was curious. I said, "Wow, so what did he teach you?" And he goes, "Well, first of all, he's charged $200 an hour cash, and it was, the thing started on time and ended on time." Okay, that's interesting. And then he said, "Well, I played the ride cymbal, I played some jazz." And I said, "Okay, so what did he say?" And the guy just said, "Well, it's okay. Just listen to a lot of records and play along with records." That was what he learned for $200. Mm-hmm. Now, when I had him play, I listened to the way he struck the instrument, where he put not only the phrasing but the accents, because inside that 2-beat dot dot dot, you can, or even in a 4/4 measure, you can accent the 2 and 4, you can accent the 1 and 3, you can accent all 4, you can accent the upstroke. Are you playing a dotted 8/16, or are you playing a triplet? And like, so I showed him what he did, why it sounded the way it did, because I always tell kids, unless you're going to hurt yourself physically, keep what you have initially, because sometimes you never know. A lot of stuff that is like Dilla beats, for instance. If someone would have played a Dilla beat back when we were younger, they go, "Well, keep practicing, kid. Your bass drum's out of whack with your snare drum." So now, I always say, okay, keep what you have, and now we're going to augment it. So now you have more possibilities. So then you have choices. And so I taught him that in that same hour lesson that I taught. And so to me, those are things to be aware of. So if you're working on groove, you know, if you play a rock beat and your hi-hat's way louder than your bass drum and snare, that's a groove. And in the old days, jazz drummers, because they were coming off the top end, a lot of times they would play like that. And then rock drummers play from the bottom up. So sometimes when they play jazz, they're going ding, ding, gaga, gaga, you know, they're hitting the snare drum really loud. So that grooves too, but in a different way. So the whole idea is have all these options, be aware of what's going on, and then be able to work within the context of the musicians you're playing with, within the composition of the style you're playing in, you know, and after a while, when you have those options, then you can make better musical choices. And to me, that's when it grooves. So I used to be I love playing with a click. Almost all the records I do, even jazz records, because I can play with a click in my sleep, and yet I can still bend in and out. I can even play free and still hit a downbeat where I want to hit it. So I'm not against perfect time, but in the old days when I heard just even like a little thing. I mean, for example, when we did This Is Not America with David Bowie, okay, you know, I got the rough mix with that I played on. And I went home, and I swear I had a cassette, and I thought there was one snare drum hit that wasn't perfect. And I drove my wife crazy. You know, I listened to it. Oh, it's okay. Zzz. Oh, it's early. Zzz. You know, oh, it's late. Zzz. You know, I played like 30 times. She said, "What the hell are you doing?" When I listen to that track now, I have no idea what snare drum hit it was. It was all fine. You know what I mean? So sometimes you can kind of get into the micro thing where you actually lose what's actually the bigger picture too. So again, to me, you know, I'm much more forgiving now as far as, because if the music flows, and a lot of times now when I listen to a track I won't even listen to it and if I hear something that jars me, then I might want to listen to it. But in general, I just listen. It's like listening to water or listening to rain. As long as it's still flowing, to me, then that's grooving. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Just before I ask some more questions, right, I'm just going to say hello to our people who are watching at home. Sharon Elizabeth, Joe Anderson, John, David Homer, Glyn Jones, Joe Morris, Emmanuel, Char, hopefully Glyn Jones, Alan Forum, Richie Burns, Marcus Storis, Dave Brown, Kenneth Russell Everett, Stephen Collar, Terry, Christian, Sue, Benson, Headley. Thank you all so much for watching. There's loads more that keeps coming on. Just a couple of things. Dave Brown, evening guys. Superb guest tonight. So obviously talking about me. Saw Paul at the opening of Steve Maxwell's shop in Chicago. That's Dave Brown. So he says hello.
Great.
Richie
Hello.
Burns, hi Matt, Paul, Rob and Pete. Great to see you all. Great to see you. Great to be able to see you. This is brilliant. Alan Forum, remember Pete from my Joe and MU Big Bang contests many years back. So there we go. Yeah.
Who said that?
Who said that? Alan Forum.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Peter James has just come on. Thank you very much for watching. And Christian Paul, can they keep coming up? So remember, guys, just show that you're watching by saying hi. And if you've got any questions for our panel, please put them in, and I'll get through to them as much as I can. I can't promise that I'm going to answer all of them if they can abundance of it, but we'll try and get through as much as we possibly can. Pete, can I come to you now, please?
Yes, come to me. Come to me.
Come to you.
Come to Pete.
Come to you. Same question, really. It's obviously you do a lot of teaching as well. Are you like Paul, that you think groove can be taught? What is groove for you, first of all?
Well, Paul makes so many great points that I really feel the need to touch upon. And number one of all is, what is the music supposed to sound like? You know? We have just over 100 years of recorded music to draw upon now and to be influenced by. So don't just restrict your listening to stuff that was recorded in the last 6 months. And you know, if you wanna understand the techniques and mechanics and principles of mainstream jazz, then a very good place to start is with John Riley's Art of Bop. There is not a wasted word. All the exercises are idiomatically appropriate. They're all going to sound right. But what you have to do is kind of look behind that and come out of a book like that, not just playing somebody else's stuff, no matter how good it might be. And you have to kind of reverse engineer this stuff and look at and I was doing this very thing with a student this afternoon on the subject of improvisation, and saying, well, you know, don't just play what's there, just understand the underlying principles of why what is there, and then you recast it in your own way. And the other thing, and the great point that Paul made, and it's something that everybody who has been watching this show and has heard what I've had to say will have heard this 100 times already, but it bears repetition. And that is having the awareness of your own internal balance between your four limbs on the instrument, and being able to, you know, treat your two hands and your 2 feet like the first 4 channels on a mixing desk, and having the skill to be able to bring the ride cymbal forward in the mix, or take the snare drum back. If your snare drum comping is too loud, unless you want to sound like Elvin Jones with Coltrane, that's not going to make it most of the time. It wants to be back under the ride cymbal. It wants to be supporting what the ride cymbal is doing rather than cutting across it. And just having the skill and the awareness, really, to be able to mix your own sound on the drums and know when it's time to put the bass drum a little bit more to the front or bring the hi-hat back. And just having that, just hearing what you're playing and being able to make it. And this is one of these kind of everyday working kind of situations. It's one of these little hacks that I recommend to students all the time. If you get in a room with bad acoustics, and we've all done it, we've all played in massive arenas and world famous venues, but we've also played in horrible little buildings where we have to play acoustic jazz gigs in awful acoustics. And if you've got like lots of hard surfaces like stone floors and glass and things like that, you know your drums and cymbals are going to sound really, if you're not very careful with them, they're going to sound really offensive. But if you can just mix your sound to work with the acoustic, because remember, if you're playing in a quartet, the acoustic of the room is the 5th member of the band. And if you can cope with that and just, you know, hear what you're doing and make it work in the acoustic context and setting of where you're playing, then you've got a much better chance of sounding good. As opposed to if you just come out and play stuff that you've learned by rote. I practiced this all afternoon today, and you're going to hear it now, which is, you know, sometimes that's fine and you can get away with it, but more often than not, you just have to be a little bit more mindful about, you know, who you're playing with, what you're playing, and where you're playing it.
And to you know, Pete makes a great point, especially the way I teach with my students. I just don't go through a whole book of just each exercise. Every exercise we do, even if it's Wilcoxon's, you know, swing rudimento solos, we play it, and then we break it up. And then I say, what can you do with this? Can you displace the accents? Can you put this into 6/4? You know, can you do left-handed? Can you lead left-handed now if you're playing a groove? You know, and it just opens up people's minds, because every one exercise, if everyone goes through every exercise on a page, if everybody did it, they're probably going to sound different, but they're going to play that. If you take every exercise and you just make it into what you are, you're going to sound different than someone else that either did or didn't do it, because they might take a totally different approach. Because to me, we're all individuals, and I think we owe it to ourselves to find who we are and where we fit. You know, so like, for instance, you know, some of us, like, you watch gospel drummers, you know, and their arms are bigger than my legs, you know, so if they're going to slow it down, they're going to have a bigger sound than if I try as hard as I can, I'm not going to get that sound. Some people are wired fast. I'm wired for speed. I've always been fast, my reflexes. So You know, some people so you can make sense out of things faster. Some people are just laid back, and that's just and that sounds great too. So you know, it's fine. That's why, you know, you don't want to be just a drummer that they call. You want to be, they call you because you have a sound that they hear in their music, and that's, to me, that's one of the biggest goals. Just like Duke Ellington said, that's the greatest compliment, is to be able to have a recognizable sound, and
Yeah.
and so the way, you know, what Pete was talking about, he obviously is taking and making people aware of not only the possibilities, but making them aware of who they are and what they can do to expand their uniqueness too.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, the best kind of teaching is where you can give the same exercise to 10 guys, and they're all going to come out of it sounding different.
Totally.
You know, I don't want to teach anybody to sound like me. Goodness knows why would they want to. I want to give them the mindset and the resources to find, you know, to sound like themselves, to stand out. I mean, there are tens of thousands of drummers who are all playing the same stuff and sounding the same. And the guys who impress me are the ones who can just come forward with their own identity. And you can look through any genre, any point in music history, and the drummers who I think whose contributions have been the most meaningful are the ones who have that little unique essence. You know, whether it's Papa Joe Jones or whether it's Tony or who you know, name any master that you like, and they all have that little special something that makes them, you know, stand out from the crowd. And I encourage my students to be creative. So you get good at what you do a lot of. If you want to play page 5 of stick control for your practice routine every day, you're going to get good at playing page 5 of stick control. But I try to foster an attitude of creativity and kind of looking beyond the very kind of academic approach, and finding what's out there, and encouraging guys just to carve out their own identity, because you know, that's what's going to be meaningful and lasting, I think, as a musician.
Right. And, you know, it's more than just the drums. I mean, I had a student many years ago. He would drive up from Fayetteville, Arkansas. So that's like 18 hours to take a lesson. So the first time he took a lesson, he said, "Can I tape it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. You know, why not?" And then he goes, "You know, by the way, you know, I used to study with, in the 70s, he studied with Elvin and Andrew Cyril and Bob Moses. He taped all those lessons." He said, "You want to hear them?" I said, "Sure." So he made CDs of all that. And like Elvin's lessons would be, there's like 2 things that I remember out of that. At one point, Elvin's talking about movies. And at one point, Elvin goes, "Well, you know, you might be wondering why, you know, during your drum lesson, you know, I'm talking about movies. But if you're studying with me, you're going to get me and who I am and why I am who I am." That was a real interesting thing. And then another one where he was going, and he was, I guess, studying with another drummer in New York as well. And he was talking to Elvin. He says, "Well, this drummer wants me to hold the sticks a certain way and play this thing." So Elvin goes, "Well, we'll play it, you know." And the guy goes on the floor, "Tom, dun, 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 whatever, you know." And Elvin goes, that sounded fine. He said, "This other drummer, this other teacher just wants you to play like him." And then Elvin goes, he said, "Man, one time in Philadelphia, there was this drummer, and this quote unquote, he goes, you know, and he was playing his ass off, man. And I went to shake his hands, and he had no fingers on either hand, but he was playing his ass off, you know." So what does that tell you about like making music successful too, you know? So sometimes I think that we can really lose, you know, or get so obsessed with technique and so obsessed with what's right that we forget to be innovative. We forget to do the history of the music. Because I teach, like, I come up with all these classes. I've got a class right now, I'm teaching The Power of Black American Music, where we're studying the whole history of where stuff came from, through slavery and minstrelsy and, you know, the black opera. Kids don't know any of this stuff. There's a blues class I teach. They have no idea. They think Jimi Hendrix Hendrix was the first guy to play with his teeth. And you look at Charlie Patton, and he was doing that stuff. You know, you look at, even for me, when people see me play with my foot on the floor, Tom, they go, oh, you invented that. There was a Baby Dodds thing where he's doing that. And I was doing this before I saw the Baby Dodds thing, but, you know, that was nothing new. And with the sheet, let me tell you, putting the sheet over the drums, you know where I came up with that? I was playing one of there was a guy, Paul Berliner, wrote this great book, thinking through jazz. You should check that out. And he was an mbira player and trumpet player, and I did his first records called Kudu. It was called The Sun Rises Late Here. So we played a gig in New York, and the room was just like this. It was like an art studio. It was all glass, and I'm playing with this. That guy's playing little mbira. So I got so frustrated, I threw a blanket over the entire drum set and then just played the whole thing like that, because it sounded more like hand drum. It sounded more earthy. And that's where I came up with that, throwing the sheet over the drums. I wasn't trying to be clever or dumb or stupid or outside or anything. It was just out of pure necessity. And I liked the way it sounded. So to think of, you know, I always tell my kids when they're younger, when you're 17 years old, that's when you're really still looking at the world like a fresh thing. That's when you should be exercising those muscles of creativity, not getting stuck in everything. Because when you get older, people usually get more staid and they get more, you know, conservative and stuff. So exercising those early muscles of thinking, of being creative, I think that's really an important thing to be able to invent new stuff.
Mm. Yeah, I totally agree. As I say, it's amazing how things come up because, first of all, going back to the album Jones, I'm glad you talk about movies because I talk about sport quite a lot. Football, soccer for our us, like other friends in the world, and golf. I do a lot of analytical things like, you know, when you're over that putt, or it's like, it's all that kind of stuff, or, you know, when you're on the winger. And also, the other thing I say is that I'm giving you like tools in your toolbox for you to go and create something, you know, to make something from that toolbox. Go and make yourself something. It's that kind of little thing that you put into like your students' heads to basically go, no, as like Pete says, you don't want to play like me, but I'm giving you the tools to go and actually build something for yourself, isn't it? So, just a few hellos. Greg Cavalcanti, Victoria, so there's some fantastic people coming in. Charlie Ashby, David Homer, Dion Bonham, Hugo Loudon, Andy Ward. Andy Ward's got a question. We'll come back to that. Paul Roberts, John Rayner, Chris Topple, Peter Williams, Philip Green, Russell has got a question. Dorothy Taylor, hi Dorothy, we had you on in our first series, fantastic, hope you're all well. David Kane, Billy Blankenship and Marcus Stroll, I hope I said that right. Say hello to Paul Wertico, no sheet. So Rob, you've been very, very quiet, sipping your gin and tonic in your cup and your mug. We know what's in there.
Worryingly quiet. When Rob is this quiet, I start to get concerned.
So hopefully you finished.
Open up, man. Tell us.
Yeah, G&T is finished now, so you can now give us your thoughts. What do you? Because obviously you groove quite a lot. So, what are your thoughts on this subject, please?
All of the above. You know, I mean, what everyone said, fantastic. When we started to get onto the personality and the characters of the individuals, you know, I was going to, get into that because I think that's extremely important. So we teach them to play, we teach them to listen to lots of styles of music, we teach them to go out and play with other musicians, but it's what they bring to the table, it's how they play the jazz, it's how they play the blues, it's how they play rock, it's their own personality they bring to it. And sometimes when I'm watching bands do a run through, the drummer will be going through the motions, and sometimes I just have to go up and whisper in their ear, like, just feel it, relax, feel it. What do you want to do? Don't think don't play what you think I want to hear. Play how you feel this music should sound with the information that you've got. And then after a few minutes, you find that their personality comes out on the instrument, and then things start to happen, and then sometimes it comes off the grid. And if it comes off the grid slightly, but it's still moving a bit and it's got a feel, to me, that's groove. And I get very excited about that. And that's a moment where I can go up and tap them on the shoulder and say, that's it. And they sometimes look at you like, really? Was that it? It's like, yes, that was you. That wasn't a book talking. That wasn't me talking. That was you. You were actually talking to me through your instrument for the first time. you know, possibly ever in my presence. And I find that extremely exciting, and trying to cultivate that and get them excited about that and confident about that, because they know whenever they hear a certain style or a feel, because they've got the certain things they know, you know, the certain styles and things, they know what to do. It's about how you make that music happen after that. I think that's the exciting thing. And I've been to lots of different gigs. You know, you wander into a pub, sometimes you see a band playing, and, you know, sometimes it's a student of mine or someone I know, and they'll go, oh, don't listen to me tonight, Rob, you know, I didn't know you were coming. And I'm like, shut up, just go and play, you know, just play. And you hear some wonderful things coming out, you know, that just feels a little bit unschooled sometimes, a little bit messy, but the feel of it is just absolutely fantastic. And I find that extremely exciting, you know, and I think that's the thing for me when I'm teaching, I have to go for, you know, give them the knowledge, but make sure they have that feeling that, you know, they can create, they can actually make the music happen without having to shove that book up there and play the exercises from that book. I think that is the thing.
Great.
Absolutely.
Don't you also? Sorry, Paul. But just before coming, don't you find also with the groove, with your students or anything else like that? Because I coach a rock academy, and I coach all of them. So I'm not a guitarist or anything else. I'm there purely for the drums, but the musical side of it. And they are what? So they're teenagers and stuff like that. Sometimes they're not very proficient on their instrument. But when you sit back and listen to them, it's like, okay, play your tune, and you start basically rocking out to them. That's groove, isn't it, as well? You know, they don't have to be, you know, the best guitar or the drummers or the bass players or the singers in the world. And I say to them, if you see me nodding my head and going around, it's grooving, you know. And as I say, it could be a simplified version of whatever they're doing. Do you also find that, guys? It's like, you know, just sit back and there's the groove. It's like, and the drummer might be going, and you think, yeah, like it, works. Happy.
Well, let me go, like, even a personal story on my part. You know, when I was in high school, I had this great band director. I dedicated my book to him, and he just let me play anything. He would let me improvise on concert symphonies, saying, I like what you're doing more than what's written. Okay. But the thing is, when I was in the jazz band, me and the alto player were really the only two jazz guys in that band, right? We listened, we would, you know, play. Everyone else was just kind of like, they were just kids that were, you know, just normal high school kids. So I grew up thinking I was the time police, that I had to play through everything. And when I started playing with better players, I still was the time police. And it's very lonely when you're by yourself, you know, because you're not feeding off of any information. It's like bringing in something that's already preset. So one night, I remember this vividly, I was playing, you know, I think Steve Rodby was on bass, great piano player. John Campbell was on piano, went on to play with like Mel Torme and stuff. Ross Trout, great guitar player who I recorded with. I was dog sick. I mean, I could barely play. And I was sitting there and I'm playing this gig and I'm just listening to them, just kind of hanging on for dear life. And on the first break, they go, wow, you sound fantastic tonight. And I went, what? Are you kidding me? And I went, oh my God, I'm listening to them. I'm actually playing with them as opposed to bringing my set agenda in there first. And that was like such an epiphany, because you have to let the music play you. And once you listen to people, even in a conversation, as I'm listening to you, I'm getting information, new information that's going to feed into what I know or what I want to learn. If I just thought I'm going to talk about exactly what I'm going to talk about, whether it's this conversation or one tomorrow, then it's going to be very boring. I'm not going to learn. It's like you're not part of the present. And music is what's amazing about it is that we're in the present when we're playing. You know, what was past we might build off of, but it's too late to fix what you did. And then you're plotting the future, but the future's not there. And if you get there too fast, then you've ruined the flow. So the whole idea is like you're skating on this edge. And so to understand what's in the present, you have to listen to all the information that's coming in and make these split millisecond decisions. And so when we practice, all we're trying to do is like and there's two different ways to practice. There's the physical, so you're training your motor reflexes and everything to be able to, like, you know, be able to execute what you feel and what you're hearing at the time. And then it's the amount of information that you know. So if you don't know chords, or if you don't know the song, or if you don't know the style, that's going to, you know, then that's going to be a problem too. So the whole idea, you know, what we do is amazing multitasking wise, not just four limbs, but, you know, we're keeping time, we're the conductor of the band, you know, dynamically, all this stuff. And so you try to make students aware of like what a cool thing this is, but in order to really pull it off, you should know a lot of these different idioms and be able to master them. And you never will master all of them, because life is a learning experience. Just like, so, you know, I think if you played everything to be played, then what's left? So we're constantly adjusting, and as you get older, you adjust. You know, you hear people when they're young, they're all over the place trying to listen to me. You hear them later, and they're kind of all of a sudden now, oh, okay. After a while, they have their style, so now they're showing who they are. You know, Roy Haynes, man, he's been playing the same stuff for 70 years plus years. You know, and yet it works because of his musicality of making it work. And you know, there's an interview with him where he said he would have loved to have like Buddy Rich chops, but he didn't. So he had to come up with something else and he came up with these sort of rhythmic things. And you know that joke you've heard, like Buddy Rich did it, Elvin Jones did it, Roy Haynes did it and did it and did it, you know? So, yeah, and if you don't know what that means, just like if someone quotes a tune when you're playing with them, you know, then that's just going to go right by you. And Pete, you know, you said that you knew that drummer. I don't mention him, but there was this really good big band player too that I played with. Really, I think Bobby Shue told me, his trumpet player, that this guy had 5 tempos. So when you played with him, he said, "Let me count the tempo off, because it's just going to gravitate to where I'm comfortable." So like when I teach kids, I say, you know, throw the metronome. Zzz. So, you know, the difference between 120 and 119 in the studio, you know, sometimes it might feel really good, but let's just go like 1 or 2 metronome markings faster or slower. If you can't do that, you're going to gravitate towards your muscle memory where it's comfortable. Yeah. So that kind of stuff too. I mean, there's so many things that we do and have to teach. Memory.
Don't get Pete on muscle memory.
No, it's
but you know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. You are with me, muscle memory.
Yeah. Pete hasn't got any muscle memory. He's like a jelly man. Basically just walks up and flops about. Well,
that's a different muscle memory. What I'm talking about muscle memory in tempo, where you're comfortable executing something.
The comfort zone, where everything.
The comfort zone.
Floats back to.
There's so much cool stuff.
Couple more people. Dave Hollenby, thanks for watching. Jeff Inman, was it Joven Alexander? Thank you very much, guys. David, Ian Stock, hello, Ian. Thanks for watching what he's getting. A couple of things that people are saying. Paul, I play in a trio in a restaurant as a adept. This is Richie Burns, and it's great to groove the brushes with piano and bass. Drums works great. Oh, play it great. Brushes are so underrated, especially in this day and age, I think. Kenneth Russell says, hi, Paul, love jazz, but a few years ago started to go to a blue jams. Total out of my depth. Went a few more times and found a blues band. I loved it, and that folded. But a few months later, I did a dep with the same guys, and it worked. Now we're playing a Western swing band, and 2 of the same guys now love the folks that love my drumming. Great. So as I say, 69 Pensioner enjoys it. So why not? Age is no limit on basically music. So we've got our dear friend over here. Obviously, he's been on the chat show. He's an institution basically in the UK drumming industry. Is Gary Alcock. He won't mind me telling you. He won't mind me telling you. He's 82, still swinging like nobody's business. Fantastic. We've got some questions coming in, mainly for Paul, but we'll see where this goes. But I think it's a good time to bring it in now. It's from Andy Ward. Hi, Andy. It says, hi Matt, Pete and Rob, let the good times roll. Question for Paul, welcome. Can I ask you, when did you know that drums were going to be your instrument, and which drummers inspired you early? God bless America tonight, he says. Well, it's during the
Okay.
day over there at the moment, but there we are.
Well,
So Paul,
well,
when
the
did,
drums just
yeah.
came naturally to me. So when I was like I was 12 years old, and my family and I moved to a different city, and my mom was like, "Well, you should take up an instrument. Just don't take up the drums." But I was always tapping on stuff. I mean, and so I joined the grade school band. I was in 6th grade. Now, all these other kids had been playing since they were like 7, 8 years old. And my band director was a saxophone teacher in grade school. So he taught me how to hold the sticks. So I learned on pillows. I taught myself all this stuff. And and then before I know it, like, I was the soloist in the band. And then the first time I sat down at a drum set, I could just play it. I have no idea why. And I didn't even get a kit until I was 14. And then I wanted to be a chemist. So my high school band director, who I mentioned earlier, Donald Ahrensberger, he wanted me to join the band. And I was like, I'm into these other things. And finally, he got me to audition. And I didn't even look at the audition stuff. And so I just blew it basically because I wasn't interested. And in the concert band, there were 5 seats. He had so much faith in me. I came in 8th. He expanded it to 8. And before you know it, I was the head of the percussion section. So he saw something in me that God knows why. And so I always loved music, and I bought records. I mean, I had thousands of records, and I would get, listen from Baby Dodds all the way, to Han Bennink. I'd listen to Bobby Graham or, well, the Kings back then. You'd have Mick Avery, but Eric Delaney, people like that. Like I was listening to people like that all the way up to whoever was the most modern person, like Michael Giles was a big favorite of mine, or Robert Wyatt. So to me, it was just a natural thing. And before I knew it, I had a full scholarship at a university, and just things kind of just, it was never a plot. It was never any kind of thing. Well, if I do this and I just kind of just followed the direction of where I felt I should be. And it's always been like that. I didn't try to get Pat's gig, I mean, none of this stuff. I just did the best I could, believe in what I wanted to do. And that's sort of what happened. And the fact that I did have really incredibly fast reflexes helped. And music made sense to me. I've got great pitch. So I can hear like 2 notes and I know what song it is. It's like that. And so music always made sense to me, and I would play along with like the AM radio. I'd have like in back, I'd be listening to the Hollies, with Bobby Elliott and stuff, but I'd be playing free, but in time. So I taught myself, instead of just, you mentioned the grid, instead of playing just mathematical subdivisions, I also played organically, where the point from one point to the next point can be anything. I taught myself how to do that and still stay in time. I never had any drum lessons until I was in college. I asked my mom for drum lessons when I got my first drum set. She goes, "No, just keep doing what you're doing." So it was like, that was my journey, and I'm still like that. A lot of times I won't sit at the drums for a week or 2, but I'm constantly listening. I'm constantly reading. And when I play, I feel better. It's like, I'm 67. I've never hurt myself, luckily, because I had really loose technique. And I still love this as much as ever, but it's a different life now. Now I'm like I said, I'm a professor, so I'm home. And when I tour, I go away for, weeks at a time. Last year I was in China and Russia and, Spain and Italy. And so I play with different musicians from all over the world. A lot of times, a lot of record dates I never hear the music up front. It's like either they put the sheet music in front of you, or sometimes it's just like we just play. Like Word of Cocaine and Gray, we have 7 records. Everything is 100% improvised. And I've been doing that since Earwax Control and Spontaneous Composition, some of those records. I've always loved to just play in the spur of the moment, just like this conversation is. So invariably, you bring in who you are. I mean, you know, nothing is 100% new. I mean, it's just variations, and with other people, it's variations. So that creates something. And that's sort of, I don't know if that answers that question, but that's how I got into this, and that's why I'm still in it.
No, that answered very well. I've got something that basically spans from that. I want to ask. I'm going to come to Rob because he's finished his gin and tonic now. Marcus Strew, I hope I'm saying his surname. Says, "Cool to meet Pete and Rob. Cheers from the north side, west of Chicago." Paul, you said something, and I basically want to say that it's like you know, you put yourself in little boxes. You know, it's like that groove is like it's in there. We talk about 4/4 all the time, you know, in the popular kind of sense, and you know, you basically put yourself out there to be organically, you know, go sort of timing stuff like that. I always tell my students that, you know, basically bars are basically there just to basically give you bite size of information. They theoretically shouldn't be. That's why we sort of get phrases and all kind of stuff. So I talk a lot of phrases. I'm going to come to you, Rob, first, because I say you haven't got anything in your hand at the moment. Obviously, has.
As far as you can see, you might have. You have no idea what's going on.
But do you think that's right? So, you know, we see things on the page and it's very formatted, but in music we shouldn't get like blinkered to like, oh, this is a bar. It should be like continuous. It's a continuous piece of music. It just so happens that we just sort of have to break it down in bite size. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And again, it depends on people you're talking to and what situation you're in. I mean, obviously, if we're dealing with university students who they've learned the music, they know the forms, they know what's going on, they can see the chart and they can play it. Yes, after that I say, right, now we have to look longer than just A into the B section. We have to look at what happens in those 32 bars or whatever. You know, we have to feel the movement, because you could record a chart all the way through, and I expect we've all done this. We've done it, we've played it, it's great, we've hit all the marks and everything, and we go back in the room and we listen to it and they go, yeah, it's great, but it's just not happening. And you sort of go, well, what do you mean? Look at the page. I've hit every one of those dots and it's all been crossed, you know, the T's and everything, it's all done, but it doesn't feel right. Okay, so sometimes I've gone back and said, right, I know the chart, music's over there, right, let's go again and let's play. And all of a sudden you start seeing the music almost as a journey, you know, because we were saying about movies earlier. I get a lot of my students to think in colours with music. And I also get them to think about, what does this B section mean to you? What does the chorus of this song sound like? It's like crazy, it's going mad. It's like something like Lord of the Rings, you know. What would you do on drums? You'd go crazy. You'd start riding the crash cymbal, you know, you'd give it some. Or is this section quieter? Is it darker? Is it more film noir? You know, how does that feel? Get your brushes, maybe switch to sticks, you know. Oh, that's a bit of a quick transition, but it's going to sound fantastic. You know, it's going to sound amazing. Make that work. So, yeah, I agree with you. But it depends. Obviously, if I'm teaching someone a lot younger, it's different. They have to obviously see the regimental. Yeah, but definitely when you're dealing with someone who's a bit older and they've got some experience, man, opening up that world of, right, you know the chart, put that to one side, you've got all the hits, now play the music, feel the music, make it happen. Make people emote, basically emote. Because I think sometimes, for me, a lot of drummers, and sometimes they've been my students, and I've had to rethink about how I talk to them, but to make them emote on the drums, it's one of the hardest things, you know, because if you say to a stranger, right, okay, I've got a set of drums, what does this sound like? They'll go, like you're angry. Okay, what about this? Oh, it sounds funky. Then you get the brushes out and you play tenderly, and they get a little bit lost. They're not quite sure. If you got on the piano and started to play some lovely chords, they'll go, oh, you're sad, you're in love. So one of the things I try to do with certainly my playing, and also passing this on to my students, is try to emote, what does love sound like on a drum set? Yes, it could be Bonham, full on, like, well, hey, baby, here I come, you know, but let's get the mallets out. Let's do some other things. Let's play with our hands. Let's just start to, it's a bit arty, but let's get into emoting on the drums. Let's make people feel something. Because if we get over the groove thing, the funk thing, and the swing thing, that it's all great, and you need to nail that. But I think there's a whole sort of grey area where sometimes we can be a little bit guilty of not passing on that little information, as I say, about the colours, about the textures of the instrument and the textures of the sound, and go a bit deeper beyond the books to stuff that all four of us here have felt before, and a lot of people watching and listening now would have felt before. But sort of getting into that, sort of, you can't really put your finger on it, but that moment you feel something on the back of your neck, you know, you get the tingles. That's that feeling you've got to try and, you know, captivate. Does that make sense, guys? You know, I don't want to get too arty or conceptual here.
No, it's perfect. And you know, for those people that haven't seen A Different Drummer, the documentary, a 30-minute documentary on Elvin Jones, where he talks about, because he saw colors, he'll hit a crash. He goes, this one's orange and this one's yellow.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So absolutely, Robert. I mean, that's perfect, you know. And the fact is, you know, see, I also listened to a lot of drummers that weren't famous, that were brilliant. And that's the other thing. It's the road less traveled. So I always talk about this drummer, Bob Moran, or Robert Moran. If you can find, this was never made into a CD. There's an album by Ernie Watts, the great saxophone player who I played with. It's called Planet Love. Came out in 1969, I believe. And Robert Moran's on this thing. And the way he plays, you have to find it if you can, because he just phrases over everything. And so I learned from an early age about how to think that way, as opposed to just listening, you know, to Philly Joe and all those players. You know, they're all great, but if everyone's listening to the same players, again, it's like practicing the same pages. You really want to find other people that have taken what maybe they listen to and put it in a different direction. So the road less traveled can be very important. So, and what he did, you know, he would play like ideas and come back to ideas. I mean, the whole thing, I mean, I wish if we had more time, I would almost play a track or something, you know, to listeners. And also, he's also on a great record by John Clemmer called All the Children Cried. So he played with a lot of different people, you know, I mean, but, and he was an LA person. So he played with, I mean, even Pat Boone, I think he was the musical director of Pat Boone. He was on a B.B. King record and all this stuff. He was also in this amazing band called Ron Meyer's Big Enough Band. And it was all the top studio players. So they're playing everything in 13/8, 11/8. And it was never released. So he actually sent me these CDs. And when you listen to this guy, you're going, how can this guy not be famous? But, you know, the problem sometimes is like, even, you know, we get typecast. So most people know me with Matheny, which is great. It's great to be known. But some of the best stuff I've ever done is not that. You know, when I'm being most creative, a lot of those records no one has, or you know, or they're really hard to get. So you have to almost kind of look at, don't try to be famous. Don't just listen to famous people, because there's a lot of great people out there that aren't famous, but they have a lot to say. And that's really important to teach your kids, even in life in general. You don't have to have the biggest airplane and the biggest yacht and be president of the United States and all that to be a successful person. You know, you just have to fulfill what you know in your heart is right in your lifetime. And that's the way I try to teach and live.
Yeah. Too right. I think when you were saying, you know, talking about this kind of journey, so that, you know, obviously people do know about the Pat Metheny group, but it's the first circle, 22/8, you know, but then it changes. So unless you actually know about it, because I played this first time, and I was a bit, whoa, when I first saw it, and so I listened to it, it's like, flipping heck, how do you play this? Obviously, then you study it, you listen to it, and yeah, it changes, you know, time signatures, and it goes right. But if you basically take your musical mind like outside, it's a 4, then it's a 5, or so you have to count it in 5, then 6, 5, and 6s, or the you know, like, it's just one musical journey, and so it's the melody that basically takes you over there, and then it takes you to another place, doesn't it? You necessarily, when you're playing that, are you counting constantly? 50,
never counted it. I never
because
counted
you can't,
it.
can you? You can't.
I sang the melody. Yeah. You know, in fact, just the other day, I don't know if you know who Norman Connors is, a great drummer. Norman Connors. Okay, so on his second record, Love from the Sun, there's a tune called Revelation that I used to play along with all the time. It's a Herbie Hancock piece. So I just went back with it like this week, actually, and I was playing it, and I'm going, wow, you know, what time signature is this in? And it turns out it was like the intro, like with the bass, I think is 4 and 6. Then the song is in 5, and then the bridge is in 3. I never counted that out before. I would just play along with it. And so I was not thinking of all those grid subdivisions. I was thinking of the overall flow of the melody and then the harmony. And that's the way I kind of looked at it. And then if I did, you know, like with First Circle, I mean, there was no drum chart or anything for that. I think I might have looked at, like, if you got to the bridge where you have different, like, you know, bars of 3 or whatever, then I might go, okay, well, yeah, I better count this out to find out I'm missing that. But then I never counted it again. I just was aware that it changed there. But I've always done it that way, you know? And that's maybe why I sound the way I sound, is that I'm was always much more interested in melody and harmony than rhythm, believe it or not. Even when I was in high school, you know, in the marching band, I didn't want to play snare drum. I wanted to play bass drum and cymbal so I could augment the melody of the marching band, you know, and I was the head of the percussion section. I just looked at everything that way. And to get back to what Rob was saying too about playing dynamics, you know, sometimes I look at so many drummers and it's like they're triple, quadruple exclamation marks the whole time. If you talk like this the whole time, would you ever listen to me talk like that? I mean, it's like, shut up, you know? So music, if you talk really soft, people don't think you're powerful sometimes. They think, oh, well, maybe you don't know what you're saying because you're subtle. That's why a lot of music that we love gets lost to the bigger masses, because they want to have the strong leaders. They want to have the dictators tell them what to do. And some of that music, I mean, I love heavy metal. I'm not putting that down either. I play that stuff. But so much music now is a physical thing, showing how you know, it's like drumming envy, you know, like who can hit hardest, who can play fastest, who's got the biggest drum set. Man, it's not like that. I mean, when we toured with my high school band, I just played, like, I taught everybody in there how to play like one instrument when we were featured. So I taught a kid all to get all these sounds out of the cymbal. I taught somebody else how do you get, and so we would play concerts in front of different high schools. So rather than have everybody play, we showed all the little nuances, and kids were like, wow, they had never seen anything like that. So, you know, we have to think a lot differently. I think even in society, that all of us are special in our own way. You know, whether we're black, white, male, female, transgender, whatever, that we all have something to offer. And that's the beauty. And I think music is an art form that translates that in real time. But people have to be able to be aware of it, be able to understand it to a point, and the music has to make you feel something, whether you understand it or not, you know?
I suppose people out there also who are readers, Peter, I'm going to come to you here. How do you make that journey from basically you're seeing you know, almost a grid on the page to then become that musical journey, you know, through the music? Obviously, because if you turn up to a reading gig and you don't know the charts, you have to do that. What makes it special for you? Because say when you play, you have so much melodic context you're playing. What's your recipe for that?
Well, it depends. Go ahead,
Pete. For Pete, yes. Yeah, so sorry, Pete.
I hear melody and harmony on the drums all the time. Even though we don't have the 12 tones of the chromatic scale at our disposal, to me, the relationship between the snare drum and the bass drum in jazz comping it's this like binary melody. It's the low pitch and the high pitch, and I can imply melodies, and you know, this is what I think of. For example, when I'm comping, I imply melody by the conversation between the snare drum and the bass drum, and rather than, you know, regurgitating something that I learned from a book. I mean, a book might have taught me how this stuff is done, but in terms of the actual content that I'm going to be using, I think about melody. I think about harmony. I'm a bit of a pedant in this regard, and it's something I've been very much across, particularly in recent times, when I hear drummers say, yeah, I'm going to play a snare drum and floor tom unison. No, you're not. That's not unison. That's harmony. Unison is the same sound. Okay. You want to play unison? Play both hands on the same on the same sound source. Snare drum and a floor tom is intervallic harmony. Small tom and floor tom, that's intervallic harmony as well. And then bass drum is staccato, cymbal is legato. And thinking about all these perfectly valid terms of reference that already exist, like about melody, harmony, about note values, about articulation, that all exist and function perfectly well. We don't need to call it anything else. We don't need any new groovy names for drum concerts. And to me, it is melody, harmony, and rhythm. We have, if you're missing that and you're a drummer, you're missing a great deal, because we have it all at our disposal. You might say you're not having, as I said a moment ago, the 12 tones of the chromatic scale at your disposal. Nevertheless, you can imply a great deal of melody and harmony by how you use what you have got, without going, the full Terry Bozzio route. Just with a simple, basic set of drums, you can be very musical. But in order to do that, you have to be thinking about that, and not thinking about like licks and chops and patterns and things like that, but thinking about how our sound, your jazz ride cymbal is part of the harmony. If you're playing in a big band, if you've got the right ride cymbal, the brass section is going to sound better than if you have a crummy ride cymbal that's like too heavy and just goes ting and sounds like somebody making horseshoes on an anvil. But if it has the overtone of the cymbal is part of the harmony. It's part of the orchestration. It's part of the voicing, and this is why musicians have said to me many times, "Oh, you've got great cymbals," because that's what I listen for when I'm choosing what cymbals I'm going to use in any context. Is how they're going to work with everything else that's going on musically. Because to me, they are the colors, the tones, the pitches of the drums are just as important as the piano being tuned on the day and it's sounding right.
But it's also your touch, see? Because, like they used to talk about, like Kenny Clark had a cymbal that, was terrible. And if anyone ever sat in on it, they just sound terrible. But Kenny sounded great on it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I always talk about, it's not just the instrument, it's really your touch. And each of us, the way we strike the cymbal, do we strike it or do we dance on it? There's all those different things. And also, to get back to your thing, Pete, when you think about, there's question and answer, call and response, things, and those are like African music traits in a lot of ways too, So like when people are having a hard time thinking what to play, well, you have dialogue within yourself. If you go up, it's like a question. It's like I asked two questions, I answered by going down. You start thinking about phonically how it sounds. So if I go, "Hi, I'm Paul Wertico," it sounds like I don't know who I am. I'm asking myself, am I Paul Wertico? So if you go up, there's a different thing. So when people comp, for instance, if we go back to language, they say, how do I comp? Well, you think of commas and periods and exclamation marks and question marks interjected. You start thinking the language of what you're trying to say, except the medium now is your drums. But you're injecting the same kind of mentality, except it's just in a different idiom. And so that actually frees up a lot of kids too, instead of thinking what's written on the page or what drum lick this is or who invented this drum lick. Who cares, really? I mean, it's good to know because you want to know as much as you can. But in that moment, it's happening in real time. You want to be aware that that's a possibility, but are you composing? So we're not only conductors, but we're spontaneous composers too, as we should be. We should be. Yeah. Well, that's why, like, I was going back to this guy Bob Moran. You could just listen to that whole record, just listen to the drums, and so when I talked to him, he was like, "Oh man, I was only 21. Like, I think I was playing way ahead of the beat." I said, "No, man." And it was funny because who's on that record? You have Ernie Watts on sax, Clarence McDonald, this keyboard player, he's really famous. He became a big studio guy. So he produced like James Taylor and stuff. Here he's a jazz musician. I think Stan Gilbert was the bass player who went on to play with different jazz musicians. But, that's like a lost record that I picked up probably for 23 cents. And, it was on Pacific Jazz, because that was Buddy Rich's label, and Ernie played in Buddy's band. So, and they never made it into a CD. But, try to find stuff like that. Try to find really amazing performances that will make you think differently than just listening to trying to sound like Elvin or trying to sound like Tony or trying to sound like Jack, because those are great things to be aware of and to study, but those aren't the only ways to play. Famous people are not the only great musicians, like I was saying. No.
Too right. We've got a couple of people watching. Thank you very much. We've got Craig Chapman and Lev Simon. Thank you for watching. Craig Agarhorn, Rachel Ward, Stefan Gola has asked the questions for Paul. Hi guys, hi Paul. I'm a fond of brushes and played 80% brushes. Your last train home rhythm with the Pat Metheny in 1987 was phenomenal and will always be. How did you get the idea of developing the special technique, a unique groove? Greetings from Bonseo, South Italy. So there we go. So that's that question there. Can you remember that far back?
Well, sure. I mean, I always loved brushes. I mean, there's times when I play with Larry Coryell when he would tell me to go to sticks because I just wanted to play brushes. I mean, I've always loved it. I got a chance to hang out with Philly Joe Jones, where he actually went through his book because I was playing. He was playing with Bill Evans, and then I got a chance to hang out with like Ed Thigpen at his apartment. He came to a clinic. I went to his house. So I've always been interested in brushes. Now, Last Train Home, I think Pat and I were just together, and it was the tune. It was going to be it was kind of a train kind of beat. And I'm into trains. I mean, yesterday when we were talking on Skype, I mean, one of my other passions is I've driven trains. I've got a model railroading layout. I've always been in the trains. So when I did that, it was just playing that, that's not an inventive beat. It's just basically your train beat that people have played, but it worked perfectly. And, to do that for 5+ minutes, a lot of times people go, how do you do it? Well, you just do it. And if, I remember, even in concert sometimes, say, if your left hand would get tired, then I would just concentrate on my right hand, or I concentrate on my bass drum. So I wouldn't think about like anything that was getting tired, so you would always kind of change your focus because that is a muscle memory thing. That's with a click too. So you have to be perfect. If you leave a 1/16th note out, people are going to go, aha. So that's basically how I kind of came up with that. It just fit the music. And we went in and we recorded it, and that was pretty much it. And now I even have to play that in Chicago sometimes. There's a band called Deacon Blues, which is like a Steely Dan cover band. And it's really fun to play that music. And a lot of times the guitar player likes to play 2 Metheny songs, and that's just one of it. And so people are always still like, oh, wow, is this guy going to be able to make it or not? But it's sort of like, but it's actually easy. And again, like with anything, you stay in the moment, and like if you tense up, take a breath, and like I said, concentrate on something else. Because if you concentrate on what's starting to get tight, then you're in trouble. You always have to find a way to get through what you're going through, and that's it. That makes sense.
There we are. Hopefully that's answered your question, Stefan. As I say, it's a great track. Rob, talking about brushes, are you seeing a lot of your students asking for brushes? Is it a popular thing within students these days?
Obviously on the jazz courses, yes, but privately, not always, but I always introduce them to brushes. I just think it's a great thing to do, because even if they're a rock player, I'll say, look, just get some brushes, get used to whether you're traditional grip or matched grip, just get a feel for some rudiments, like humour me for a quarter of an hour of the lesson. Let's go through some rudiments. It'll be good for your hands. Get used to the brushes to come back up. Makes you work a little bit harder. We can get rim shots if you want to. Let's play in the centre of the drum. Let's experiment with some swish sounds. And after a while, the ones who were sort of not going to be convinced suddenly go, these are pretty cool. I'm going to go and get some. And I say, well, if you think that's cool, let's get your right hand, if they're right-handed, doing the kind of windscreen wiper thing, and you playing a rim click on 2 and 4, you know, and put maybe some hip hop bass drum in there. How do they feel now? And all of a sudden they get, you know, really kind of vibey about it. They're like, my God, this is a great idea. Show them a few little tricks with the bounce and the brush so it rolls on the rim, little bits and bobs, you know, and it just inspires them. So that's the drummers who don't usually come for brush lessons, but I will say, hey, you should check them out. And then they sometimes go away and say, do you know what? I started using them with my band. You know, in one section, instead of the hi-hat with the drumstick, I'm playing it on the side between my rim click and my snare, because it's a really dead sound. And sometimes I'll say, okay, well, if you can do that, let's play maybe some dum da da ga da, and every now and again lift your palm off, so you get like a pang, and then bring your palm back down, so you get like almost like not a conga part, but you get that kind of difference in sound. So it sounds like you're not just one drummer, you're a percussionist and something else. And you know, I just find that really inspiring, because I love doing that as well. But with the jazz guys, yeah, they come along and they've got their little licks and stuff. But you know, I get them to swish clockwise and anti-clockwise, try all the different things, you know, all the different swishes. It's just such an art form that people say it's getting lost. But you know, I think if the teachers introduce it in a certain way to the non-jazz drummers, I think it could be reasonably healthy and survive. Certainly through my crop of people, there's not one that would go and say, I've never played a brush with Rob in my life, you know. I think
the thing is, though, I'm sorry to interject, but when you were talking about this, I mean, if you watch me play, I'm dancing. I always thought like someone said I look like I'm sword fighting, but I just thought I'm painting. But see, brushes teach you that you don't have to strike everything down. You know, you have, so I even teach this all the time. If I go to the right on a cymbal, it goes up. I go to the left, it goes down. So all of a sudden now I'm playing melody by doing this. Not only that, I'm also, you know, it's more legato. So if I go ding, you know, ding, bang, instead of ding, da ding, and hit down, I get more of a legato sound for a longer note, just the way I'm hitting it. Plus it's great for your wrist, because now you're not using repetitive motion. So everything you're doing is constantly relieving something, you know? So whether you play brushes or not, what it does to your stick control, because also you can't really do you know, you have to work your fingers to get that bounce to do a nice double stroke. So when you get on sticks, then you can play from the tightest snare drum to the lowest floor tom and still have that same thing, because it's all here. You're not depending on the tuning of the drum at all. And that's, like I said, I grew up on pillows before I had a snare drum. And that, you know, I just taught myself that for whatever reason. And brushes does that. And then, you know, then teach them, like, you know, Train Time, you know, by Cream, stuff like that. You know, brushes isn't all jazz, you know, even though Mitch Mitchell's, you know, like on the Hendrix tune is great, you know, Up from the Skies. That's fantastic. So there's a lot of different ways to use it. And then again, you know, if you play any country western stuff, you know, you got to know that train beat, you know, and so I would say that you don't have to be a jazz player to play brushes, basically, you know.
You just have to be a train enthusiast.
Well, that helps. That helps get you to the right train beat, I guess, maybe.
Pete, do you want to comment on anything of that? Have you got something to say about?
Well, yeah. Hello.
Oh, hello.
Sword fighting now, yeah.
Well, that's somebody else's hand.
One of the things that I'm very conscious of is that the way we play jazz brushes is all came about in the context of traditional grip, and for me, one of the things that's really important is when guys are doing this with a brush, that there should be some pulse in that left hand, and it's not just some kind of background white noise. So getting, you know, I can play a brush pattern between my left hand and my right, my left hand and my left foot, and leave my right hand out of it completely. But you can hear the complete jazz ride pattern there, because there's the, you know, the control, you know, the short notes and the long notes, the rotational movement, the lateral movement of the wrist, and and Paul really kind of was way ahead of me here. It's exactly what I was thinking. Is playing brushes really gets you away from that whole thing of being rebound dependent. And so you're playing the drum rather than the drum playing you. You have no aspiration to do anything musically that would kind of perhaps prompt you to pick up a pair of brushes. What it will do for your technique is immeasurably beneficial. And, you know, because do remember that technique is the means by which you convey your ideas, your musical ideas. And the more technique you've got, the more range you have to convey those musical ideas. And it's as simple as that. People say, oh, technique, it's just chops. No, it's not. Technique is the means by which you speak the language. And the more of it you've got, you know, I've got a thesaurus right here, just out of shot. And, you know, the more words you know, the more different ways you have of saying things. And that's what technique is, to my way of thinking anyway. That is what technique is truly about.
And you have to know which words work in situations. So you're not going to use large words to a little kid that's not going to understand it.
Exactly. And when to say nothing.
Right.
You know, to know how to use the language, you learn it, and then you know when to shut up and not say anything. And
that's probably the hardest thing as well, isn't it?
Going off the whole time.
Yeah, right. That's the hardest thing to do, is actually to shut up, really, at the end of the day, isn't it? So less is more, that sometimes, you know, kind of that phrase keeps coming back many times. David Kane said, where brush meets flow. It's quite a nice little phrase there.
Hi, Dave. He's from Wertico, Kane and Gray. So he's in the band Wertico, Kane and Gray. Brilliant sax player and engineer and keyboard player. Hi, Dave.
Good. Thanks for joining. Also, another one for joining, Stephen Dansuski Jr. So yes, thank you very much for watching as well. I hope I said that okay, Danofsky. So we've got one question, Peter Williams. Do you know, guys? Just noticed the time. I've got a radio controlled watch down here just to double check the time. It's 9:45 already. Look, the time just flies, these things, don't they? Peter Williams, hi Matt, great to have you back. Thanks very much. I think they mean the other guys as well. And a great show tonight. Hope this isn't too much of an oddball question. But we like oddball questions, so no question is a bizarre question in my mind. But how do you feel about seeing Phil Collins the way he is, hardly being able to walk, to rehearsals in the last couple of weeks? It's sad. You don't want to see anyone in that position, do you? But how do you guys feel? Rob, how do you feel about the images we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks about dear old Phil Collins being pushing his wheelchair to, you know, up the ramp?
Yeah, it's horrible, isn't it? I mean, it's seeing anyone's sort of heroes, you know, because Phil Collins is one of my drumming heroes and musical heroes. Seeing him like that, it's heartbreaking, really. But you know, if he can still sing and he still wants to go out there and perform, you know, why shouldn't he? You know. It's like when we used to see Prince go on stage with a walking stick because his hips were screwed for all those splits that he did in high heels, and he wouldn't have any operations. You know, that was really sad, but he would still go up there and play amazing guitar and amazing piano. He just wouldn't jump around and do the splits, you know, and that's his life. And, you know, unfortunately that took his life eventually. So seeing someone like Phil, I think all power to him, but it is extremely sad. But if he can still go out there and do the job, and I actually know the guy who's doing the sound for the tour, because he's off the last Lorena McKinnon tour. That's Rob. Hi, Rob. So yeah, all power to him. I hope he can go and do it. But it is upsetting to see it. You just don't want to see that, really. But if you can do the job, well, all power to you, Phil. Go and do it, man. You know, the world loves you.
Do you think also sometimes, I say anyone can answer this one, but you know, we want to see these guys, you know, do what they do at the best of their ability. But do you think there's sometimes that you have to say no? You know, it's like, okay, money situation, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes or anything. But do you think it's that kind of, you know, we're going to feel sorry rather than actually going to see the music? Is that a statement that we can, you know, harp about? I don't know. Is it? is there time to say stop?
Yeah, I mean, without actually being so indiscreet as to mention any names, I have seen one or two musicians who I admired hugely, very much in their declining years, still out there on the circuit and not really able to deliver in the way that their legendary reputations might perhaps have given an audience to expect. And one friend of mine was actually getting cancelled by a lot of promoters because it got around that he was having some cognitive impairment, which was very, very sad. And I don't know. I think sometimes we don't know what the remainder of our lives has in store for any of us. And for myself, I personally, I would like to think that I will be fortunate enough to be in a position not only to know, but to be free to say, I'm not making it anymore, and it's time to retain my memories.
Musical dignity, I suppose, isn't it? For once, yeah.
And to kind of maybe take a back seat from here forward. But we don't know. I mean, all of our lives are different. I know legendary. I know one particular legendary drummer who's in his mid-70s, and he has said in my hearing, I can't afford to retire. He's got a big family. He's got private health insurance to pay for, and everybody's circumstances are a little bit different. But for myself, I would like to think that I will be perhaps, I don't know, blessed, if that's the right word, to know when enough's enough.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm listening to some of my own playing in recent times. I might already be there. I don't know.
Well, the thing is, at the moment, unless we're teaching, I suppose our performance careers we are in retirement at the moment, aren't we?
Well, we are in state.
So we're all retired at the moment. So I know when to say no because I can't say yes at the moment. So there we are. But Paul, look,
can I? I know you're being slightly flippant, and God, why not? We've got to find some amusement in this if we possibly can. Dire that the situation is, but I have to say that the unintended consequence of this enforced hiatus is that it's really given me an opportunity to focus on my playing. I mean, I'm playing as much piano as I am drums at the moment, and learning a whole lot about composition and orchestration and different aspects of harmony and theory that I hadn't had time to focus on before. But also the fact that I'm not going out, I don't know, average 4 or 5 times a week and playing from muscle memory. I've really been able to unpick a lot of bad habits and just kind of move a lot of new things into the center ground that I've always wanted to have time to do, but never had time to do because I was sitting in traffic jams in my car. Whereas now I'm sitting at home with a drum set or a practice pad. And I know it's awful and it's terrible and it has done immense damage to the live performance industry in so many ways. But there are positives in there if you just look for them.
Just go on that. There has been, so I've seen a few positives recently. There has been the smaller things. There's someone's finding loopholes and that kind of stuff that live music has been performed. And please, guys, if you can, obviously not at the moment. It's in the UK, but there is opportunities. Just like outside little events, weather permitting. So people are streaming stuff. If you can do it, please try and do it because obviously it keeps the morale of the music alive as well. We love to see this. I'm not working, as I say. Paul, I was talking before we came on, Paul and I, we haven't gigged, as I think Pete's said, oh no, you've done one, a couple, since March, but it's so nice to see other people being able to do it. And it's like, you think, oh, I'm jealous, they're doing it, I'm not doing it. No, let's embrace it. Oh, fantastic. Well, when we come back, that might say the president for, yes, we can do it. So please go, support anything that can live music wherever it is. If it's online, if it's basically, at a farmer's market or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So, just please go and support it. Paul, I'm just conscious of time. Any plans for retirement?
I don't know to retire from what though, really,
It's a
because
musician's
what I'm
question,
doing now,
isn't it? It's on that form. So like, when do you plan to retire? When you have to do all these forms. So I'm a musician.
yeah,
I'll never retire, kind of thing.
right. I mean, because I still feel like I'm 18, believe it or not. It's weird. It's like, even like I was just saying, even if I go away for a week or two and sit down with the kid, I've got new ideas and everything feels great. So, you know, yeah, I can't imagine changing anything at this point. I mean, hopefully health will stay good. And, to get back to like not being able to play at the level that people know you of, hopefully I haven't reached that at all. But, I do know some famous musicians and I kind of respected them. I won't say who they are, but, the last concert I saw, this one person, I mean, he was killing it. But he told me he and his wife, he had a couple strokes and he just didn't feel like he was going to be able to keep up doing that. And so he was retiring, and luckily he had enough money to be able to do it, and missing playing. It's funny because I've gotten a lot of opportunities to play still. I've done a bunch of sessions, but I just didn't feel like, going out and playing for clubs right now. I think I'd let other people do it. And it's funny because, we practice a lot and there's that danger, is everyone going to have more chops and nothing to say? But since people are going through hard times, a lot of times when you go through hard times, you actually do have more substance to play. So I think it's going to be a balance of people having like much better technique maybe, but also having much more things to actually talk about through their instrument when we do get back. And people are going to be ready for live music. So I kind of look at this, it's very sad. And I really feel terrible for musicians who only make a living from music because they're hurting. But in general, I think things will come back and they will be different, but life's always different. And I think for young kids and stuff, they're the future. And, time will just keep going, and we just never know what's happening, But this is a great time. Like, Pete was just saying, I'm studying all the time, learning, listening, just upping my game because I love it. It's my hobby as well as my profession. I'm not doing it because the teacher is telling me I must do it to get an exam. I'm doing it because I can't get enough of it. I love all this stuff. I mean, even doing what we're doing right now. I know time is going, but if we wanted to go another 10 hours, not 10 hours, but if we wanted to go another 3 hours, I'd be fine. Because, it's like I'm home right now. Everything is fine. It's great talking with you all. It's great to meet you. People seem interested. So since we're doing something we love, let's share it, So that's the way I'm kind of looking at it.
It'd be interesting because obviously we've been talking about musical conversations inside. We are composers on our own and stuff. It'd be so interesting to see the conversations that come out when people are being able to perform, especially in the jazz kind of conversations and situations. I'm looking forward to it myself. Having a conversation with you guys has been, this is basically what's kept a lot of people going, these kind of chat shows. A lot of people have been doing interviews, and so, we support everything that in the drumming community that we can possibly do. And I think it's the conversations that basically keeps people going. These conversations, obviously, we may be able to do it like with 4 drum kits and have a conversation there where people can see us. We don't know yet, but maybe in our new premises, which we're going to in the Palace Drum Clinic, it may be possible. We will see. But more on that. So I'm just conscious. We just had a couple of people join us at the last minute. Brian Johnson, is that the singer? Maybe AC/DC.
No,
I'm not sure.
say.
But that'd be great if it was. He hasn't got a motor car on his thing, so maybe not. David Homer says, have you tried playing with other musicians over Zoom? It's not practical over Zoom because there's time lag, but there's a few other applications. Band Jam, I know for one. That's pretty pretty close, a few others. So if you are looking actually to play with other musicians over line, there's a few out there. Just do your research, but Bandjam is one of them that can almost get you to that situation where you can actually play together.
Again, it depends on what kind of music you're playing. Because literally 10 years ago, I just got an email marking there was a 10-year anniversary. Think about 10 years ago. Think what the latency was 10 years ago. So I got asked to play. I was at Roosevelt University in room 925. The keyboard player, who I never met, didn't know, was in New Zealand. And then the bass player, Krzysztof Sharansky, like Poland's greatest bass player, he was on stage at the TED conference in Warsaw. So we tried to play, and it didn't work. So I suggested, let's play free, which we did. And it came off fantastic, because then we were able to just kind of like morph into these different things. And Krzysztof's on stage in Poland, so the audience is seeing us play and hearing us play. So obviously, if you're going to play where the grid is happening and you have to be lined up, it's not going to work until they get that all straightened out. But as far as just playing open and creating and making sounds together, you can do that right now. And I think we should. It's a chance to do something that maybe you wouldn't normally do if things were normal. So it's just an opportunity.
Well, it's exactly like having a conversation, isn't it? So you can hear someone and you reply back to them. It's exactly that, isn't it? So
just like this. So I mean, if we were trying to clap at the same time, we'd probably be like maybe an eighth note off, with the latency. But we can talk like this and answer each other back. So you're just doing that through music as opposed to doing it through the language of the conversation we're having.
Definitely. Well, guys, we've had a fantastic conversation tonight. It's great to be back. It really is good to be back. And I forget how quick these sessions go. Maybe we should open for 3 hours. No, I can't last 3 hours. I need the toilet in between. I'm showing my age now. Glyn Jones, great show tonight. Thanks. Really enjoyed it. Richie Burns, thanks for a great show. Very interesting. Keep safe to you all. Kenneth Russell, yeah, so agree, Paul. Us pensioners just stick together. So, guys, thank you very so much for watching at home. Just remember, we've got some fantastic stuff. No one's commented on this, so hopefully that's no news is good news. So, hopefully you like the new branding. There we go. So, you'll be seeing that a lot. As I say, it's been in the background all the time. So, there was getting into your hearts there now. Lots of things happening at the Palace Drum Clinic. Launching some great stuff in the new year, so after Christmas. So, make sure you put some.
Can I put in a word about? Check out this book if you'd like. It's called Turn the Beat Around. I mean, it's one of those books that's impossible to finish because there's so many things. But
Paul,
the whole idea
could
is
you just
about
duck so people can see the tagline under the heading? Could you just duck a second, please?
Oh, sure.
There we go. So, Drummer's Guide to Playing Backbeats on 1 and 3. Thank you.
Yeah, I came up with the term front beats instead of backbeats, just in case band leaders wanted to say, "Man, play a front beat." They would know what that means.
Yeah.
And what this did to my students. So even though if you play backwards, you're concentrating on the 1 and 3 with the snare. When they went to play a regular beat, their groove was so much wider because they could hear those half notes better. And it really grounded them. And plus, again, it made them think completely different. So instead of doing to get that into doing to get that, and you have a da to doing to get that into doing. So that's a Led Zeppelin beat, but backwards, and it makes you think differently. And so the whole idea is to go, like I said, the road less traveled. And why does everything have to be normal? I mean, so this is a way to really kind of open up some new, new musical concepts and musical ideas, and hopefully even some musical styles will come out of this, So who knows? But anyway, I just wanted to hit everyone up before that, we go away.
Most of the last analogy I can basically put it on that, Paul. It's like when you go on a train journey, the scenery changes when you're on your destination, isn't it? So it's that thing, isn't it? So there we are, getting back to trains for you. So
There you
guys,
go.
thank you very much for watching. Yeah, remember, if you're watching us on replay, if you've lasted that long, hashtag replay in the comments. But we've got some fantastic things. We will be back next week at 8:30 live on Facebook, GMT time in the UK, with another special guest. But in the meantime, if you haven't liked us, and I don't know why you haven't because you're watching us, hit that Facebook like button and follow us, because there's more fantastic things to come up in the future. If you want to be more interactive, we have got our Palace Drumming Club as well on Facebook. Instagram, we're doing some fantastic things on Instagram. We've got some fantastic drummers I'm interviewing there, usually Thursday nights. So get yourself there, Palace Drum Clinic. And obviously, loads of things happening. Just follow the website, sign up, just hit like all the time, and share away. The more people everyone knows about this, the better, obviously, the world will become. So it's a great privilege for me to say this, but Pete, Rob, I have missed you guys, and I've missed your wealth of knowledge. It's lovely to see you two. So thank you very much, Rob and Pete, for again a fantastic evening.
Thank you.
That's what you get. And thanks again to our special guest all the way over from Chicago land, Paul. Thank you very much for joining us on the PD Chat Show. It's been an absolute privilege. And hopefully we'll be seeing you some more maybe in the future at the PD clinic. So maybe. So it'll be fantastic. So yeah, you heard that, guys. More from Paul. So thank you, guys. Some lovely thing. Yeah, great logo. Thanks, Richie. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, guys, for joining us on this new series. More to come next week. So it's basically enjoy the freedom, basically now, if you can. And we'll be back. You stay safe, guys. And it's good night from them. And it's good night from me as well. So thank you, guys. Stay safe. See you next week. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.